Welcome to yet another episode of Howdy Partner on AWS On Air. We're here today with a new partner with Datadog today, Ilan from Datadog. This is the only show on AWS that is dedicated to our partner network. Mo, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? I'm AM. You've seen me a bunch, but we've got a new co-host with us here. Mo, tell us about you.
Well, if they've watched our show on Twitch before, then they've seen me too. But yeah, Alhassan, I'm a partner solutions architect manager at AWS, and I'm so happy to be here with Datadog.
Yeah, and Ilan, you've joined us today from Datadog. We're going to be talking all things monitoring, observability, metrics, all the things app devs love, right? So you want to give us a rundown real quick of what is Datadog? How do I use it with AWS? What should I care about? When I think of Datadog, what should I think of?
Sure. So good to be on with you guys again. I know it's been fun doing a few of the shows with you, AM. So Datadog is a monitoring and observability platform for your applications and infrastructure. We look to help you understand everything from the performance and availability of your application down to the security. The security and user experience for them as well. So it's everything from things like synthetic testing and canary testing on the front end, digital experience side, collecting all your logs, all your metrics, all your traces, which we heard a little bit about control theory and why that's important during the keynote today with Werner. And then looking at code instrumentation with things like profiling and distributed tracing in our APM product. And then, as I mentioned, starting to doing quite a bit with security over the last year as well, with our runtime security offerings as well as our security analytics product. So, the idea is to help all of your teams collaborate and do so with data rather than with opinions. So it's your dev and your ops teams aren't fighting over, is there a memory leak? There's clearly a memory leak. It's on the graph. And now we just talk about how to fix it rather than pointing at each other's code or at each other's infrastructure. That's what we've been doing for the last 10 years, and we've been expanding since from those dev and ops personas into other teams as well, where silos might be there: security, business, QA, bringing them all together.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, we heard a lot from Werner today, all about observability and monitoring. That part of the keynote must have been pretty fun for you, Ilan, considering this is what you do all day. And there was a quick little shout out to Datadog as well, alongside some of your other peers. That was exciting for me to hear. Always happy to hear our partners get some recognition. So yeah, I think Mo's going to kick us off. We've got a bunch of questions to ask you today. So Mo, you want to fire off the first one?
Yeah. So, because we're at reInvent, obviously reInvent's a great time for folks who are already on AWS to learn more about the AWS landscape and what's going on, right? But in particular, this is a virtual format and it's a lot more accessible. And we have people who haven't been to reInvent before, who are maybe new to the cloud at reInvent for the first time. And so I wanted to know, is there a way that maybe Datadog can help accelerate people move to the cloud, accelerate with migrations, and just move to AWS in general?
Yeah, so we're part of the AWS migration competency program, specifically for that reason. I think one of the challenges, whether you're anytime you're sort of migrating an application, whether it's changing what it depends on, or changing a version of software that's running, or changing the provider that it runs on, moving from your data center in your office somewhere into the cloud, is really understanding all the bits and pieces of what it connects to and starting to inventory, inventory what it offers to the end users, how they connect to it, and then what it connects to and depends on downstream. I remember back to my, if I think back to my days as a practitioner rather than a product and product guy and evangelist guy, I think back to the time when I'm sitting in the offices at Edmonds, and we're having an outage. I'm trying to figure out why the hell we're having an outage, and it turns out there's like a service that's literally running under somebody's desk on like a old Dell laptop, and you're like, how did that ever end up anywhere in the production flow of what we do? I think it's been 15 years, so I can tell the story. And the reality is, like, you just don't, if you don't know the flows of where things are, you don't know what you need to move. You don't know what the inventory of those assets are. And so that's step one, is sort of is understanding where all your bits and pieces are, and that's where, Datadog's distributed tracing product with APM can help you understand all the calls that are made. So when a request comes in, it usually fans out to other services, data stores, third parties, where are all the things you need to connect to. And so, Werner talked about that in the keynote today, and the famous XAMZ ID for all of the requests you make when you open a support ticket. Similar story, but being able to see that across all of your services and draw a map about how they all depend on each other is important. Knowing what type of resources you need for each of those services, by, like, what does the memory footprint, like the CPU footprint, look like? Are you picking the right instance types? All of those things are things that you'll want to do by looking at the performance of your underlying systems and applications. And then, of course, as you're getting ready to code, or one of the, you'll say to yourself, well, is my performance going to be the same? Is it going to be better? Is it going to be worse? And so that's where, understanding using our digital experience monitoring product with synthetics and RUM and again, APM, understanding, like, how long do those requests take? Are they succeeding? Are they failing? Is it a good user experience? Like, all of these things are important for building confidence as you're making a move. And so, it's a little bit of a story of, you don't know, if you don't measure it, you don't know if you're getting better or worse. But it's also, if you don't know what you have in inventory, how do you know what you need to buy, what you need to sell? So we've seen that companies, that a lot of our customers will come in and they'll be, a year or so into cloud migration. They're like, they're just not sure if they can turn off that one data center, or if the experience will be the same. And so they're not ready to push the button. And then bring in an observability story and helps them gain that confidence. They take that nebulous cloud thing, make it less nebulous to themselves, and they know that they're succeeding. So that's how we fit into the migration story.
It's funny, I have to give a shout out to one of my favorite people at AWS. I've never met her, but I've seen her present so many times now. Becky Weiss, during Werner's keynote today, was talking about operators mentality, and that sounds exactly like what you're talking about here too, Ilan. Is that, like, as an operator, you have to wrap your head around all of the disparate things that are happening in your system, right. And it's difficult, right? I think even, one of the questions I wanted to ask you today, too, was about containers. And I think that's changed the perspective of a lot of operators, too. What kind of trends have you all seen in containers alongside Datadog?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so we actually just put out a study about this back in November. We do this annual report about container adoption and orchestrator adoption, what we see amongst, in the industry based on all the data that, we collect. We have, well over 14,000 customers sending data into us. Many of those are using containers. And so we start to look at, sort of highly aggregated, highly anonymized trends that we see in that space as to what things are happening. And so I think when we first started this study that we were running every year about 5 years ago, we were like, the big news was like, well, people are actually using containers. It's not just, running in somebody's laptop somewhere. Like, these are actually in production. And we had all these fun graphs, up and to the right, hockey stick growth of containers, which was exciting to see, because you can't, if you went to a Docker meetup, of course, everybody says, I use Docker, which, but how do you know for sure? And so with this type of data, it was helpful. I think some of the things that I think won't be a surprise to anybody is that, these days, the containers are less and less being run as sort of individual, individually managed, like snowflakes. Just like you don't want to, hopefully you're not managing in your EC2 instances of snowflakes either. Running your containers just, yourself, Docker run or what have you, is not exactly a scalable plan as you grow. And so what we're seeing is more, unsurprisingly, almost everything is orchestrated. And even more so, Kubernetes is running in over half of the container environments that we look into every day. So I think it was like 90% of the containers that we monitor these days are managed by an orchestrator, whether it be Fargate or ECS or Kubernetes or Nomad or something of that nature, which is pretty stellar penetration, I would say. Like, we've gone from a world where a couple of years ago it was just in the tens of percents to now 90. Like, that's pretty much everybody. Some other trends that we're seeing are, I think folks are still trying to figure out how to optimize their containerized workloads. They're still putting a little bit too much, they're still requesting more resources than they actually need and not necessarily right-sizing them just yet. So I'm curious to see what AWS and the wider ecosystem start to do in terms of recommendations there, especially as you're talking about things like the world of Fargate, whether it's on EKS or ECS, where the only thing you pay for is the runtime of the resources that you've scheduled for your container, rather than that whole instance. You really want to get to a point where you're very, very tight on and only asking for the things you need, because that was the point of getting to Fargate. Instead of running a big empty node with one container on it, was just running that container with only the resources that it needs. So that's been interesting. The other is just like the growth of Fargate. I think if we're seeing 1 in 3 of our AWS container customers are using Fargate, which is I think there's sort of an interesting dynamic there as you decide which serverless technology to go for. Do you shove all your things in the container, or do you shove it in a function with Lambda? But both of those are taking off like gangbusters in a way that I think folks are just liking this idea of not having to manage underlying resources and just let my code run. So I'm curious to see how that'll roll into things like Proton and some of the other new services that have that came out over the last couple weeks here at reInvent as folks really get to start kicking the tires on them.
So it's interesting that you mentioned service. One, I know that you not only have the state of containers report that you put out every year, but I think this year you also put out a state of serverless, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah. You mentioned Fargate, and I was wondering, how can customers potentially use Datadog to accelerate their migration to containerization in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very similar story to what I mentioned about moving from your data center to the cloud, and now you're moving from your cloud to containers. You have to, again, you want to see how all of these pieces connect, and you want to see how they perform for your customers. You want to make sure that you're making optimal use of the resources that you have there. So it's a similar idea. We have deep integrations with Fargate. We were a launch partner. I think we launched our Fargate support at 2 years ago when Fargate came out. I think you all launched Fargate on stage, and about 30 seconds later, we had launched Fargate at our booth at reInvent, which was a fun launch to be at. So we have deep integrations with all these different technologies to help you get visibility on it, and to really make the right decisions as you're making those migrations. Not every workload is great for containers. Not every workload is great for functions. Not every workload is great for serverless containers versus some of the more complex deployments you need in Kubernetes or ECS or what have you. So having tools that can integrate with all of those different pieces makes it easier to understand the health and readiness of your application to be cut over. We've got some great features within the Datadog product, like auto discovery, where as your container workloads spin up, as your containerized workloads spin up, will automatically detect what's running in those containers and start monitoring from the correct technologies. If you're going down the Fargate path, we'll connect with things like FireLens, so that you can easily get your logs together with all the rest of your telemetry, without a ton of heavy lifting. And so that's our goal, again, is to help you understand the health and availability of all those applications, regardless of what technology stack you pick. And so that's where we fit into that story. I'm a big fan of the Datadog Live Container View as well for this type of stuff. It's like, imagine running, a lot of folks, maybe run CTOP or similar tools on individual hosts. With Datadog, what we're able to do is give you all inventory of every container, broken down by pod, by deployment, by service, by task, whatever your grouping is, depending on your orchestrator, and actually let you see down into the individual processes running inside those containers. So you can see, if you are exceeding memory or CPU requests, like which process in the container is doing that. Being able to flip from that to, live tail your logs and all these other, live tail your logs, see the traces coming in and out of those containers, the metrics coming out of those containers, really lets you accelerate your troubleshooting and response as you're trying to figure out what might be going on. Why is this container restarting constantly? Why isn't the request getting where it needs to be? And then with our network performance monitoring product, we can actually start to show you down to the process or container level, like what every single request across all of these different services are, and how they interact with each other without having to do any code instrumentation or tracing, just looking at the network flows running across the wire. And that's interesting. We've done, both for containers where like everything is just, yes, people are putting monoliths in containers. They're also putting more of these microservices in containers where everything just connects to everything else. And so you start to wonder, you have to know what it's connecting to, so you know if it's doing the right thing. And some of the things that we found, for example, is like customers have used this tool to not only see what is everything's connecting to, but how it's getting there. So are you going across AZs? Are you going across regions? Are you going back to your data center that might still exist somewhere? And so we both Datadog and our customers have been able to use this to like significantly optimize our cross AZ network traffic, for example. Turns out AZs exist for both availability and for cost reasons, and so you don't want to make these calls across AZs or across regions if you don't have to because of cost and performance. Availability and performance. But the other aspect is like that can hit your network bill pretty hard. So if we can help you identify those cross AZ calls and you get both better availability for cheaper, like that's a win-win all around. So NPM can help with that too. So
yeah. I mean, that's it's interesting to note, right? We heard in Andy's keynote about the spend on cloud, and it was kind of a staggering statistic to me, actually, that there's still a lot of IT workloads not in the cloud at this point, and we saw that reflected with some of the releases that we had with EKS Anywhere, ECS Anywhere, Outposts last year. People are running stuff all over, right? In different environments and things like that. You all are a part of the Service Ready program for Outposts, I believe, as well. Where does Datadog fit in with all of this, right? So you mentioned the orchestration for containers, platforms. If we can now run EKS and ECS Anywhere to orchestrate our containers, what is Datadog doing to surface this across all these different environments?
Yeah, I mean, much like we do in EC2 or a native AWS region, whether you're an Outpost or on these new EKS and ECS Anywhere launches running on your own hardware, we're able to connect right in there. So we're pulling data from CloudWatch, of course, which all of these services emit, but we're also, our agent also runs co-located directly, directly on the same nodes as those services, or as a sidecar to your tasks, and collects all that data. And I think that's the key piece there, is being able to aggregate information from all of your different places. If you're running something on-prem or in multiple AWS regions, or maybe in another provider for some reason, you want to know the global state of your environment. You want to know the global experience of your customers. Not you don't want that data segregated so that you're bouncing between different monitoring tools and in each of those different regions or points of presence. And so bringing that all into Datadog in one spot lets you compare and contrast across them. So yeah, we were excited to be part of the Outpost Service Ready launch at the start of reInvent, and to be launch partners on the ECS and EKS Anywhere offerings.
Yeah, real quick, for anybody who's unaware of these Service Ready programs, it's a really great designation for partners. It's not an easy program to get through. You have to prove out a lot of things for your technology to become a member of these Service Ready pieces. Yeah. So, congratulations to you all on getting that designation.
Thanks.
Yeah. So an interesting announcement today was that AWS is supporting OpenDistro for OpenTelemetry. And we were just talking about integrations and how you all supported Outpost. So I was interested in hearing how potentially you all supported OpenTelemetry, and maybe if you could tell us all, like for people like me who don't necessarily know what OpenTelemetry is, what is that?
Yeah, so OpenTelemetry is an open source project at the Cloud Native Compute Foundation. It's the same foundation that backs Kubernetes and a number of other cloud native technologies. And so while they're most known for Kubernetes, I think that there's a lot of the technologies that are part of that ecosystem are also hosted at the CNCF as well. So OpenTelemetry is a project that's being built cross vendor to create a bit of a standard around how we collect data from our applications and from our infrastructure. So initially launching with traces, and with metrics coming to that soon as well. The idea is you have a vendor neutral set of libraries that you can use to emit those metrics, traces, and other types of telemetry, and have them go to to the provider of your choice. And so Datadog's been a longtime supporter of OpenTelemetry back to the days of open tracing and open census, when those were, when OpenTelemetry was actually two projects, one by, one at the CNCF and one separately by Google. They've now merged into this OpenTelemetry world. And so, back last year, for example, we donated our own tracers and the instrumentation that we had developed over the years for a number of different languages to the OpenTelemetry project and to the CNCF. And we've been active ever since. And so that's, it's exciting to see, AWS getting into the game as well with the OpenTelemetry distribution that you all are offering, and that you're throwing the full weight of support and, assurance around this distribution and the collectors as a way to, as a way to get telemetry from all of your AWS workloads and beyond. And so Datadog's, Datadog as part of that will be one of the vendor plugins that will be available in the OpenTelemetry distribution. So looking forward to that, to that GA, which I think might have been today. I had to step out during a little bit of the keynote, but I believe it was earlier today. So exciting stuff. And so I think this is I think this will make it easy. This is going to increasingly make it easier for for developers across the board to get instrumentation from our other applications, and to get it into the visualization tool or the back end of their choice, or into multiple of them if they prefer. So I think Datadog is one of the partners. CloudWatch is one of the partners. I know you all released some other tools as well today. So it's choice is good, and it's good to see the validation of what of the importance of monitoring and observability. And I like the way Werner talked about control-free regions talk today, and connected the dots between that and all the tools that we're launching together.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of launches, right? That's what is on everyone's mind since it's reInvent season. I think that's what majority of people are watching for. What's coming out next? So I have to ask you. I love to hear from our partners, but even just you, Ilan, as a technologist, what types of things that have happened so far at reInvent have caught your attention, both as VP of product at Datadog, and just as a fan yourself of technology?
I mean, from the Datadog side, I'm always excited about things that you're doing with the new the container services launches that you all are doing, and the observability launches that you all are doing. Like those are places that we work very closely with yourselves. As a technologist, I'm always impressed by the the increasing the instance types, the new instance types that come out every time. You're like, how can they squeeze more oomph out of that? Well, it turns out you find some new silicon that you built yourself, and you do that. So both the ARM and the Mac stories, I think were interesting this time. Not I don't know that I'm personally going to I don't know how much Datadog will or won't use the ARM. We have it. We've had some great stories out of that out of our CI and CD teams, and I'm hoping to see it in more places. But I think that's an interesting trend, like seeing, x86 has had this huge domination over our space, both cloud and on-prem, for so many years. And seeing the ARM story take off has been interesting, giving some more choice there, and really the performance, bang for buck that you guys are all offering there. So excited to dig into those. The Mac instances are interesting. I having been in a previous life, I worked at a video transcoding company where we needed Mac instances in order to do all of our transcoding. Like everything ran in EC2 except for a literal rack in a colo location with just like piled Mac minis one top of another. And so the idea that they're now available at like the drop of an API call is well, it's exciting to 10 years ago me, and I'm curious to see what folks do. I'm curious to see what folks do with it now. Like I just don't do as much Mac development myself these days, but should be exciting. And Datadog was able to launch our Mac support for the Mac instances just shortly after that as well. I'm fascinated by this trend of talking about on-prem though. Like last year we had Outposts, which was a big news. VMware was on stage with Andy and team talking about the partnership there, and you all started sending this hardware out to people's offices, which is a thing I never, outside of the snowmobile, and it was never a thing I thought I thought I'd see from AWS. But now we're now beyond that. We're talking about EKS Anywhere and ECS Anywhere, and curious to see what else is going to run anywhere. over the next year or so. It just seems like a very big change in approach for the AWS team, and so one that I think customers and and partners alike are excited about. So there's not always an AWS. Well, there's AWS regions almost everywhere. They're not necessarily everywhere that you want. So I'm looking forward to seeing who's the first one running like an ECS cluster in Antarctica or something like that. So we can. That seems like it'd be a fun story to tell.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, actually. So we're running close on time here. I got to push us to start wrapping up, but I want to thank you, Ilan. It's always a pleasure to have you here. As you said, you've been on Howdy Partner before. Very happy to have you here again, and on this special AWS On Air version. Normally, you can catch us on Twitch. We usually run every Monday and Wednesday at about 2 p.m. Pacific, where we interview all kinds of partners, just like Ilan and Datadog here. Mo, I want to thank you too for joining me as co-host. Always amazing to have you. Any parting words for us, Mo?
We're not signing off, or we're not doing.
No, I haven't been doing the regular sign off for AWS On Air. Actually, I haven't. No.
No worries. Happy trails. Giddy up. Y'all come back now. We'll see y'all on Twitch. Always happy to be here, and thanks for having me, man.
All right.
Thanks for having me. Happy monitoring, everybody, and drop by, come by the Datadog booth, check out some of our demos. Stop by the the DevOps challenge that we're running, and win yourself some fun prizes. And we'll looking forward to seeing you all soon.
You read my mind, Ilan. I was about to ask you as we wrap up, how should people engage with Datadog? Number one, go to the booth, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
Anywhere else you'd like to encourage people to, just go check out Datadog, I would assume too.
Yeah. Datadog, learn.datadoghq.com is a great place to get up and running with Datadog very quickly. What runs you through a whole bunch of hands-on tutorials that really get you to the help you understand both the basics of observability, but also the Datadog platform as a whole. And it's all free to kick the tires on. So go give that a shot if you've never used Datadog before. I'll drop some links to AM and Mo for the container and serverless studies. We'd love to. Curious to hear what how folks are thinking about those. So.
I love free, so thank you for that, Ilan. And I hope to see you on another episode of Howdy Partner back when we're on Twitch. So we'll look forward to that. Thanks for joining us, Ilan. Thanks for joining us, Mo. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you soon.